I hope you had a good break. We are back, and now that we've gone through configuring up the intrusion detection and prevention system, well, now it's time to look at configuring the rules themselves. How do we build the rules? Well, in the security UI, we go into the intrusion detection or IDS, IPS, and malware prevention, and we go to the distributed rules tab, right? We've been in this general area for a little while now if we've been following along in the UI. And this is managed very much the same way as the distributed firewall, in that I'm going to create policies and I'm going to populate those policies with IDS, IPS rules. They're going to be processed top down, just as we show them in the UI here. So you'll want to think about that for when you're testing and wondering why you're not matching one rule or another. Well, maybe you're blocking from some other rule. So we're going to build our rule. And like I mentioned, when we overviewed this a little while ago, the big difference two big differences between this and the distributed firewall and a distributed firewall rule is that the security profile is going to be an IDS IPS profile. It's not a layer 7 context profile at this point. And there's no action, there's a mode, right? Do I want to detect only, or do I want to detect and prevent? So what action am I going to take when I match? When I want to prevent, right? Notice we've got highlighted in red. We don't use red very often. It's probably worth noting. I said this earlier, we'll say it again. If my action in my signature is set to alert, well, there's no action we're going to take at the firewall, right? We're not going to drop, we're not going to reject the packet. The action on the signature has to be drop or reject in order for the prevent mode to do anything more than alert. Now, we can go in and look at the events. We can go in and see what we've matched after that's happened. And we do that through the threat event monitoring header in the security tab, not in the policies header. And under that header, we should see IDS IPS, right? So here, IDS IPS and malware dashboards have been split apart. But the IDS IPS dashboard gives us kind of a timeline based plot chart of events by severity, and gives us a nice table that shows us all kinds of information about the events down below that. So, what's the severity? How critical is it? What's the CVE that's associated? What's the CVSS score? Some descriptors about the event that's happened. And we can always expand that out, right? There's the little arrow caret over on the left-hand side. Well, we can expand that entry out and get even more detail. Where is this attack coming from? Where is it going to? What are the source and destinations? How often have we seen this? What's the history of this event? Just a great wealth of information about a given event that the intrusion detection or intrusion prevention system have found for us. Now, in the context of the IDS IPS, right, mostly we've been talking about east-west, a distributed intrusion detection and prevention. Well, here we've also got a north-south intrusion detection and prevention system, meaning that we have the same capabilities on a tier 1 gateway as we do on a distributed intrusion detection and prevention. But I want to stress that this is only on a tier 1 gateway, not on a tier 0, just a tier 1 gateway. We have this available. Now, why do I want to use a north-south intrusion detection and prevention system? Well, the same way I want to use a north-south or perimeter firewall, even when I have the distributed firewall. I'm looking for different kinds of things. And in a centralized fashion, this may be a better place at the perimeter to look for some of those things. Now, what do I have to do to configure this? Well, it's pretty straightforward. I have to enable this, right? Same place we enabled the east-west intrusion detection and prevention system. Same UI there. I can scroll down a little further and enable the north-south intrusion detection and prevention system. Again, I still need internet connectivity for manager. I still need an appropriate threat prevention license for this to work, right? So we've got to think about that. Our tier 1 gateway has to be backed by an edge cluster because this is a service that runs on the edge node, right? This is part of the service router. Now, the architecture here is, well, it's a little bit different. There is a dedicated IDS/IPS engine that runs in the data plane of the edge transport node, and so that's what's going to be programmed by the central control plane as we are building out our IDS/IPS policies and publishing our rules and so on. And then there's an event forwarder on the edge node that will forward event data, right? IDS/IPS event data back to NSX Manager where we can go look at it. Now here we're back in shared settings for the IDS/IPS and malware prevention. And as we scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, we'll get a list of our tier 1 gateways where we can in turn enable the intrusion detection and intrusion prevention system on each individual tier 1 gateway. So I don't have to enable this on all of my gateways. I can just enable it where I want or need it. Configuring rules, instead of going to the distributed rules, I can go to my gateway specific rules under my IDS/IPS rules. And here I'm going to again create the policies and rules just like I have been. I need to make sure I select an appropriate IDS/IPS security policy and set my detect and prevent mode. If I want to monitor those north-south IDS/IPS events, I'm going to do it in the same place that we were just looking for the east-west. We'll actually see them by default, together, right? And if we look, we're highlighting the traffic type dropdown where we can just look at distributed IDS/IPS events, or just look at gateway IDS/IPS events, or I can look at them both together. And we're going to get the same type of view here that we just saw for the distributed IDS/IPS, where I get my plot chart of my different events. I get my table of those events, and I can expand those events out and get more information. Now, here we have a lab. This is a pretty big lab because we're going to play with intrusion detection and prevention. So there's a lot of stuff we've got to set up, right? We're going to turn this on. We're going to make sure our signatures get set up. We're going to create a profile and configure some rules, and then we'll generate some traffic, some malicious traffic. This is one of my favorite parts of the entire lab environment. We're going to generate some malicious traffic for this. And we're going to look at this and we're going to see what's going on. We're going to see some of this action in the distributed intrusion detection system. But up to this point, we're just alerting. We're not stopping anything. So once we see some alert events, well, then we're going to reconfigure our policy to prevent as well as detect, and we'll run the attack again and see how that changes things. So this is a really, really neat lab, but it does take some time. There's a lot of stuff we've got to do here. So take your time, go through lab number 13. When you come back, we'll go ahead and wrap this up and get ready to move on. Okay, so we've discussed what the IDS/IPS is, how it works, how we're going to program it, how we're going to work with it, how we're going to build it, how we're going to view events. And then we went into a lab and we did it all, right? We went in and we built it all up and we saw it happen with our very own eyes. Really, really cool stuff. Now, when we come back, the next video is going to be all about NSX application platform, which is going to be a huge infrastructure component for the additional advanced threat prevention services that we're going to talk about in future videos. Come back. We'll see you there.